The founder of Panasonic once said,
"We can lead more meaningful and constructive lives
through the pursuit of activities that will ensure
a better today than yesterday,
a better tomorrow than today."
Panasonic is committed to creating a greener,
more equitable future for everyone.
Explore Panasonic Green Impact
at na.panasonic.com/green impact.
Life is full of awesome what-ifs, and some not so much, like unexpected medical costs. That's why United Healthcare provides Health Protector Guard fixed indemnity insurance plans to supplement your primary plan and help manage out-of-pocket costs. Learn more at uh1.com.
If you're unaware, T-Mobile calls themselves the Un-carrier, which is fitting, considering they've just unraveled their price lock guarantee for new customers. If you ask me, that's pretty uncool. If you're uncomfortable with a company that says one thing but does another, then stick with Xfinity, whose whole home Wi-Fi, wired internet, service, speed, and reliability are unparalleled. Avoid the Un-carrier. Stick with Xfinity. Effective for new customers after 1/17/24. T-Mobile's price lock will only reimburse your last bill if you terminate service due to a price increase.
Welcome to the new Chemist. We're glad you're listening. Feel free to download this podcast on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other platforms. Here on the new Chemist, we discuss chemistry, which simply put is the science of change, as well as careers, community, research, and COVID-19. We're happy you're tuning in.
Glutamate lets off alpha Kg. CPS1 releases carbophosphate. Let's pull out the phosphate using OTC. Let's remember urea cycle, you see. Citrulline, your boy, gonna miss me. Aspartate toxic carbonyl, you see. Hope I got that argine synthene. To make isosuccinate CTAC. Urea cycle. I hold back sometimes I won't. The feedback regulation fund. I finesse a biochemistry. Might go through with ATP. I go hard like gamma P. I make sure I balance free energy and still good things. There are a lot of good things to rapping, you see, and rapping, you see. Good things. There's a lot of good things rapping, you see, and rapping, you see. A to A. We move and I change, only partly. I release a few more rate. I'm sorry, arginine, yeah. Put it on me. Yeah, you know, lots of juice and the spinal party. I just know me. Turn the H2O into the urea. Without exclusion that we know me. Imagine honesty goes back to C. Urea cycle. I can't release it on my own. Enzymes functioning closely. I've been rapping Biochem mode. Might go through with ATP. I go hard like gamma P. I make sure I release free energy and still good things. There are a lot of good things rapping, rapping the sea. Good things. There are a lot of good things rapping the sea. I'm rapping the sea. Yeah. I've been very hungry to see. Thankful I got this cycle fatty oxidation to see. Pull out all the co-ways for me. You know there's alpha, beta, omega, you see. I go from acid to the transnoid. Through your oxidation step, you see. Hope I got the ACD and FAD. They will tell a story that was different from me. Beta oxidation. I hold back sometimes I don't. Fatty acid storage front. I finesse the Biochem mode. Might go down with FAD. I go hard like NAD. H. I make sure I balance free energy and still good things. There are a lot of good things that rapping the sea. I'm rapping the sea. Good things. There are a lot of good things that rapping the sea. And rapping the sea. Hey. L-beta hydroxyacid only partly it goes to the beta keto acyl. I'm sorry. Oxidative step only. All the jewels are crashing this bugging party. Yeah, you know me. Turn the NAD plus into the NADH. Yeah, without these cycles that we know me. Imagine dilates back to a fatty acyl. Shorten. phosphor, phosphor, phosphor. Glucose phosphorus come with HKIC. G6P is formed using ATP. Yeah, pull up the PGI, the isomers me. You know how I like it with the F6P. I want a phosphorylate, don't miss me. With the FPP, I'm moving the C. Aldolase releases the up and DPP, but with full and the G3P. Glycolysis. I hold back sometimes I don't. Because they told me my point. I can nestle glucose low. Moving on with NAD plus. I go hard with the 1,3. With the 1,3 BP. And still phosphorylate. There's a lot of things that I'm phosphor and phosphorus. Phosphorylate. There's a lot of things that I'm phosphor and phosphorus. 3PG is formed, not partly. Only 3PG uses PG, and I'm sorry. Moving on again. Yes, also do at this biochem party. We are the only PGM movie to make 2PG. Glycolysis is essential, as no meat. Imagine enolase one series in PEP. Glycolysis. I can phosphor on my own. I'm in the ATP zone. I'm wrapping this program mode. They are under fusing pyrene. From PEP to pyrene C. I'm done with this pathway, you see. And still, phosphorylate. There's a lot of things that I'm phosphorylating and phosphorylating, you see. Phosphorylate. There's a lot of things that I'm phosphorylating and phosphorylating, you see. PO40 minus structure complete. Every minor pathway most common is C. The other wrap is done. Finally. Now TV.
Well, Jake, thanks so much for joining me today. It's so good to have you on as a guest on this podcast. Added to that, I've known Jake for a really long time. The podcast has been on Odyssey, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Megaphone, and a variety of other platforms. We've had a variety of big name guests. And our guest today is Jake Desmond, who works under Dr. David Williams. His PhD advisor did his postdoctoral studies under two different chemistry Nobel laureates, R.B. Woodward and E.J. Corey. So for the questions today, Jake, what have been your long-standing interest in the field of science?
Good question. Thanks for having me, by the way. I would
I would say I've been interested in science since I was young. Kind of when that started, I'm not sure. What kind of sparked the interest, I'm not exactly sure. But I had some decent teachers back in the day that kept me kind of stimulated in my classes throughout kind of middle school, high school. And as I started my undergraduate career, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I did about a year and then took kind of somewhat of a little time off after my first year of undergraduate. And then coming back to school, then I was really focused on going to medical school. And luckily, I had the opportunity to join the dark side and kind of bail on that opportunity. So as I was going into I finished my undergraduate degree, and I took a kind of a gap year to do all these like medical school applications and so on and so forth, because that takes a lot of time and money, and kind of had to work while I was doing all that. But yeah, something that was kind of nice. Before I actually finished my undergraduate, I was working in the lab with Professor Williams, even as an undergrad. Okay, so he did say, hey, you know, when I went to him to get a letter of recommendation for medical school, he said, medical school, you know, I didn't know that you were planning on doing that. I thought you were going to do chemistry, things like this. So of course, that's kind of nice to hear. You know, you hear kind of your boss at that time kind of inspire you to maybe continue on with chemistry. And so he said, well, just do me this one thing, okay? Apply to your medical school, try to do the best you can there. I'll write you the positive letter of recommendation. And he said, just do me this one thing and just apply to IU for organic chemistry, just in case, you know, you kind of change your mind. And that's in fact exactly what happened. Throughout the whole application process of medical school, I kind of decided I wanted to be more of a scientist rather than a physician and treat patients and things like this. So, and I'm very happy I did it. I think as I progressed throughout my scientific career, being a physician looks less and less attractive, at least for me personally. I think that their hours are brutal and they don't generally don't get paid enough to do what they do. So, yeah, I'm happy I kind of chose the dark side, if you will. But that's kind of kind of in a nutshell.
Okay.
How I ended up here.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good. So it seems as if it took a while for you to decide on whether to go to medical school or whether to pursue graduate school. So how long was the process to make that decision?
Yeah, I would say most of that development took place in my year off.
Okay.
Yeah, I was still pretty excited about it going into my senior year of undergrad. And then in that year off is when I did quite a bit of introspection. And I actually had I worked kind of in a restaurant for the first little bit of my gap year. And that kind of, that is what it is. That was a way to make money and to have a flexible schedule to do medical school interviews and things. But then I actually had a job opportunity to head out to Central Oregon and work for a startup out there to be kind of the only scientist on board. Now, granted, the scientific interest there wasn't as stimulating as kind of I would hope. So, but once I got in there, that was kind of enough to get my feet wet to say, you know, I really think that this could be a positive future for me. And I really liked staying in the lab and working with my hands and things like this. So, yeah, it was mainly over that year. And also, I mean, I will add, like, with medical school interviews and there's and even the application process, there's a whole lot of sort of pencil pushing that goes on or paper pushing, right? Where you're filling out all these applications and they're asking you kind of the same questions over and over on the application, and then you fill out some sort of introspective essay on why you think you're a good fit to be a physician and things like this. And you know, you kind of, everybody I would imagine says pretty similar stuff. Oh, I care about this, I care about that, I care about my fellow human beings and things like this. So there's quite a bit of that goes on, and it also seemed like there was a big difference between applying to medical school and graduate school. Mm-hmm. Graduate school, they pay for you to go and attend to see if you'd like to go there. So it seemed like they actually wanted you, rather than the opposite, is you're paying everything out of pocket for medical school, and in terms of applications, travel, when you actually have to go and have an interview somewhere, you're paying for all that stuff. That's not the best. And additionally, my alma mater, IU, so that was kind of the top school that I was trying to get into. And it's not a top school. It was a top school for me. Okay, so it's a great school. IU school in essence, great. So it was towards the end of sort of that before classes started. I would say maybe 5 months before August, 6 months before August or something, when your actual IU school of medicine started. And at this point, I was still on the wait list. Okay. So they actually called me and said, "Hey, is this Mr. Desmond? I'd like to kind of talk to you for a second because we actually need you to resend your what it was the sort of summary of your grades, like the official transcript."
Yeah.
Which is strange on a couple points. So one, I have to pay to get the institution that I got my undergraduate in, even though I'm applying to their medical school program, I have to pay, $20 to get the transcript sent, whatever. And then not only did you have to pay to get that sent, which is kind of silly to begin with, but then you also, they also lost that in transit somehow. So then I had to repay and have it sent again. And it just seemed like the whole thing was kind of, I really had these big hopes and dreams that I would be able to make some impact on on medical school training. And when I became a physician, kind of, obviously there's lots of problems with healthcare, especially with, I don't really know about other countries, but from my experience within the US, it's usually overtly violently expensive and things like this, and not really affordable. There's not a lot of widespread care and things. So I kind of had these hopes that I would be able to kind of reestablish that or help with that. And it kind of seems like the system was maybe a little too far gone for me to make much of an impact. So little things like that really helped push me in the right direction to pursue a graduate degree or study chemistry, right?
Yeah, so I'm glad you found your passion. So how do you maintain view of the bigger picture in your career and in your life in general? How do you see the forest for the trees? How do you keep perspective, essentially, when you face challenges, especially in the lab, because we know research can be frustrating sometimes? How do you keep perspective?
I would say the first thing is to not take anything very seriously. You really, I think everybody gets really wound up and uptight within their own field of study, and they think that there's kind of two aspects. One, you think that the problem you're trying to solve is the biggest problem in the world, and you're completely wrapped up because you're working for, 6 days a week, 12-hour days, and you're working on the same problem over and over, trying to get to this one goal. So everybody kind of has this illusion that their problem is an actual, big problem in the world or something like this. So I think when you kind of zoom out, you realize, oh, this is, something that's more acute to myself. And then that's kind of the first half. And the second half would be somewhat remaining focused even through whatever turmoil or difficult, whatever impasse you're at in your research or in your life or career-wise, being kind of hyper-focused on that. So I would say that's how I kind of keep perspective. I think that, myself, I kind of get into this headspace where, I build up a lot of pressure on myself trying to accomplish these goals. And granted, they're important, and I find them important. I find them interesting. I find them stimulating and things like this. But really what helps when you kind of come to some impasse, at least for me, is to zoom out and say, this is really something I need to kind of throw it in reverse for a second and kind of zoom out to really understand what are the most important things in life. And it's chemistry is a huge aspect of my life, and it consumes most of it, but I shouldn't let it dictate my joy in life. There's a lot of other things that are important.
I completely agree. So how do you keep joy? How do you have joy in the midst of these circumstances or in the midst of the challenges you face in the lab? How do you keep joy?
I think generally it's learning new things. So aside from chemistry, that's a huge, a very large aspect of my life is just learning new things, whether it's, I'm interested in like financial stuff. I'm interested in, I became a radio operator. This was somewhat during COVID. So I'm like a FCC certified radio operator.
Okay.
I own like a little house that's on the west side of Bloomington, and I like kind of figuring out, this is a problem. Like, let's say I have a problem with my garage door or something like this, these little tiny challenges, which are outside the field of chemistry completely. But in order to solve problems like this, you need to think differently. It's all problem solving, just with different sort of aspects in mind. And it's really nice to, in terms of joy, one of my favorite things is I work so hard, or people work so hard in these labs, and you accomplish so little generally. Like, it's just such a long haul, persistent foot on the gas pedal. And when you kind of sit back and say, look at all the stuff I've accomplished this week. I've worked so hard, 12 hours a day for X amount of days a week. And it's like, wow, I only got a few steps in my synthesis, but, I learned a lot, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But a nice thing is when you go to your house and you say, let's power wash the side of my house and then paint it. Oh, it's a whole new color. It's beautiful. You get it done in 5 hours, and you can look at something that is productive, that's done. And that, I think that brings a lot of joy to me. So it's kind of like, I think, at least for myself, I require some sort of like, and I think most people are like this, but you want some gratification. I mean, I think people need that. And when you work in a field like just any science, it's such a slow, grueling process for a lot of repetition, and not every day is like a sexy day in the lab. It's generally pretty grueling. So it's nice to kind of have these other avenues to get a little bit of that instant feedback, But there's several things. I love sports. I love chess. I love art. I love looking at art. I'm not much of an artist myself, but like looking at art, studying art. I absolutely love music. So I'm pretty easily entertained, really. So it's not that hard for me to find joy. I don't think. There's lots of. I don't.
That's good. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say joy is also dependent on your focus. What you focused on. What is the center point of your attention? Yeah, so that's good. So how have you been adaptive and creative in the field of science? What have you complemented to thus far? Or what are you working on that you think will complement to advancing the field of science?
Sure. That's a really good question. Well, I would say it's somewhat, I work in total synthesis.
Yep.
It's somewhat of it's an old field that's not going anywhere anytime soon. It might have its detractors. However, that's kind of my personal belief. The thing that I envision myself or kind of see as the future goal is using sort of more collaborative efforts in order to progress the field. So whether that be general science or whether that be synthesis of natural products. So, for example, I really like this sort of disconnect that, I've worked on these novel heterocycles, making analogs for drug molecules. Yep. And one of the things that's really interesting and a unique experience that I really love is I don't want to say, it's more of like a breakdown of communication between biologists and chemists. And if you can what do you mean? Yeah, so for example, if I go to my biology collaborator and I ask him, hey, what are the structures that inhibit this certain, I'm trying to inhibit transcription factors, okay? So it's a transcription factor inhibitor, small molecule transcription factor inhibitor. So what do the structures look like? You can't tell me what those look like without, pull up a paper and say this one. He can't draw that out, right? But he can explain to me what gaps in the biological data are missing and what he wants to fill to probe mechanism of this transcription factor inhibitor. Now, on the flip side, with Chemist, we're kind of blind to that, right? We're blind to these biological, how to probe, like okay, I've taken molecular biology. I know what a Western blot is, but could I go in a lab and run one right now? I mean, probably, I'd have to talk to them beforehand and kind of get my wherewithal. And most of those biology experiments are really exquisite. So I really love that. So that's one aspect of kind of collaboration and trying to fill this gap of communication, because I love biology and I love chemistry, and filling that gap is really neat to me from a communication standpoint, from a scientific standpoint. And furthermore, like as you progress through the field of total synthesis, you see like, oh, these people aren't even making stuff in the lab anymore. What they're doing is taking yeast or E. coli or some microorganism, and they're editing the genome to then spit out whatever small molecule that they want.
Yeah, biotechnology.
Yeah, so it's like a biosynthetic type of thing, right? So, and I think you get people who are really into biosynthesis, and you get people who are into bioengineering, and then you have synthetic chemists. So it's this sort of, and most people think that their method is the best way to go, right? But generally there's probably some gray area where, you can take aspects from this field, aspects from this field. And if you have this sort of open-mindedness to try to combine these concepts, I think that's how I envision kind of moving forward,
So through the idea synthesis, so joining the two ideas together, you see yourself contributing to advancing the field of science. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, that'd be almost like a future goal too. I mean, at this point, I've done a collaboration with biology group, but I don't do any biosynthetic work. I'd love to do that in the future. But I mean, aside from that, I mean, I work on a total synthesis that's a novel compound that's never been synthesized before, to our knowledge, as well as we're trying to develop and this is probably more hyper focused on what I actually do, but we're trying to develop novel facile ways to establish oxo-bicyclo systems.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, man. So how have you sought or found the right environment for you to thrive scientifically and intellectually? How did you find IU? Would you say IU found you? How did you end up by IU in the first place?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, my dad went to school down here, and I'm from Indiana. I did my undergraduate here, so that might not be I could say from like a work environment too. I think once I started working with Professor Williams, his management style was a lot of what I kind of liked. So it's he's there if you need him, but he's not constantly, he's very much finds a lot of utility in developing the student rather than his own. I don't feel like I'm an extension of his hands. Does that make sense? Like, okay. I'm not just doing. This is like a somewhat of a. I'm not just doing what he tells me to do. I'm developing my own ideas in the lab and then discussing the results with him. And he puts a lot of emphasis on that sort of training and allowing his students to develop scientific independence on their own accord. So he's there if you need him, and if he's not. And I did a lot of digging when I first joined graduate school. I wasn't stuck to the Williams lab or his style of management. And I think I would be perfectly happy in any other lab. There's lots of great labs that are here, lots of different management styles, lots of different working environments. Some people work on methodology, some people work on total synthesis, some people work on metalloenzyme. I think I would really enjoy whatever I'm working on. So that was a tough choice, picking Williams, especially it's not the best to work as an undergrad in the same lab that you're doing graduate work in, but it's exactly what I wanted to do. I think total synthesis is kind of like my first love, and I'm happy I chose it as kind of a more classical training. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. So what have been your most impactful and effective ideas to date? Even if it's personal life, what philosophy resonates with you? What ideas in chemistry resonate with you? We could phrase this question in several different ways. What works for you in your personal life? What have you recommended to other people that works well? How do you approach content in your teaching? Because you served as an AI for honors organic chemistry too, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what would you say?
I would think open-mindedness and then kind of actively listening.
Actively listening. Okay, that's good. That's good.
I would say these kind of things are mainly what's been the most beneficial to my development, and that's just across the board of personally, career-wise, and then having kind of this constant need for information and learning new things. I think that's all those three things coupled kind of, I would say that's the triple threat in my opinion, the trifecta.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, man. So, how do you maintain a balanced life? How do you maintain a balanced life given all your responsibilities and accomplishments?
That's a work in progress. I don't think I really have that figured out. And I don't know how well whoever has that figured out, I don't really.
So we can phrase it differently. How do you keep your priorities in check?
Boundaries, I think, is probably the best answer to that. So
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I really enjoy talking to people. I like talking about science. I like talking about, whatever's going on in their personal life. And I like to be kind of an open ear for my friends and colleagues. But I think at a certain point, you do have to put things in perspective and make sure that you're taking care of yourself, So I would say that's the biggest thing. And then communication of those boundaries to the people who are kind of closest to you is probably the most likely the most difficult, because you don't want to be, a jerk about things. You want to set firm boundaries, and then you also have to make sure the people who you're communicating with, that you're communicating in whatever communication style they're most comfortable with. Some people are like myself. I'd rather just be told like, hey, I'm busy. I can't talk now. I'll talk to you later. Other people need things kind of, that's kind of a little bit assertive. You know what I mean? So sometimes you need to be a little bit more kind of conscious.
Politically correct? Euphemistic?
I don't know. I just think I think people have different styles like that.
Yeah,
I think some people respond more well to that, and I think other people, you need to take things a little bit slower and be like, hey, if you don't mind, like, do you mind if we talk later? Versus like, yo, I'm busy. Like, I gotta, like with you, I think generally you and I are on the same page. If we run into each other, we've both done this to each other. Hey, bro, I gotta go. I gotta go to the gym. I got this experiment running, and then next time we see each other, it's like, yo, what up? It's awesome to see each other.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the biggest thing is setting boundaries that are reasonable, and then clearly communicating those boundaries to whomever it might be.
That's good. That's something to note. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this episode just to hear that snippet. So how have you been successful as a student? I would say let's just take a snapshot. Let's just step back for a bit. I was at your candidacy, fifth semester presentation. I was there via Zoom. And you work with Dr. Williams, who is a very notable professor. He has a lot of notoriety in the department. He did extremely well. Went to MIT and also did his postdoc on the 2 chemistry Nobel laureates. One of whom, if I'm not mistaken, is still there, E.J. Corey, even though he may be retired. I'm not sure. But how would you say you have achieved these things? What has complemented you being able to achieve these things? Is it time management? Is it your knowledge of chemistry? And how were you able to achieve these things? Like, break it down for us, like in a stepwise fashion. How were you able to achieve these things, from entering graduate school to achieving a spot in Dr. Williams' group to being able to defend your fifth semester exam? All of those things. Break it down. How have you reached this point in your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think generally, obviously the kind of previous discussion set me up for that, right? Where, setting these boundaries. I think the support system is really helpful.
Yep.
And clear communication with that support system of what you're going through. I think graduate school is really tough. I never thought that I would be challenged to this point.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really stop. After my fifth semester, I was extremely motivated because at least in my opinion, it felt like I was kind of like floundering around and just trying to scrape things together, and I was hoping it was okay, or I hope I had enough done, or I hope I didn't miss something silly, and I hope I was contributing to the lab, and I hope I was contributing to science. So after you go up for the 5th semester, you get really good constructive criticism and feedback on your performance, like either how the presentation went, how your document is, and how your closed door is, right? And that was extremely helpful, and it kind of validated a lot of things, but then it also gave you a lot of things to work on, right? So, you know, like for example,
I'm not a performance review.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're also getting a performance review from people that I hold in the highest regard. You know, I have 3 extremely qualified members on my committee, right? Professor Van Uenzi, Professor Cook, and Professor DeMarchi. And obviously, right?
You have the big players.
I got the big.
Yo,
Exactly.
Dr. Van Uenzi, Dr. DeMarchi. Wow, that's good.
Yeah. So with all 3 of them kind of giving you constructive feedback, I mean, I took it really seriously and focused a lot of my energy, and a lot of those problems that I saw in my first 2 years, I've really taken a lot of sort of initiative to correct these things.
Okay.
Like I kind of was doing a lot of different projects my first 2 years, and luckily, or I guess I was fortunate enough to complete 2 of them for the most part. Okay, one of them's been published. This is like a synthesis of a mouse pheromone. This is of a proposed mouse pheromone rather, but it's another collaborative effort. Synthetically, it wasn't terribly interesting. However, the biological applications interesting, and I did learn a lot. And then the other one was the HSF inhibitor, the collaboration with Professor Carpenter's lab, making these heterocycles.
Yep.
For the transcription factor inhibitor. And then lastly, I was working on photosynthesis. All these things were kind of at the same time.
Okay.
So the biggest thing I learned from that experience was to focus on, and this is exactly what I do now, is I focus directly on photosynthesis, at least in the lab.
Yeah.
So that was
laser
huge.
focus.
Yeah. So that was a huge thing. Was, you know, they complimented me on like kind of the breadth of knowledge, right, and the breadth of projects I've worked on, but they said now is the time where you really need to buckle down and zoom in. And, you know, I'm here to do total synthesis. You know, these other projects are fun, and I learn an immense amount of information from them. But, you know, it'll prepare me for working in the future with other, you know, biology groups or whatever, collaborative efforts that I kind of seek out. But, you know, that was a huge thing. So I would think those were, you know, I mean, it takes a lot of work, and you got to have, you know,
great
support staff, hard work, and obviously like a certain aptitude. You know, I didn't come in with a crazy amount of knowledge, but I find when I'm really interested in topics, I can remember things much better or solve problems easier when I'm interested in them.
Yeah, that's good. Passion and having a framework to associate information with. So yeah, that coincides. That coincides well. Yeah, man. Yeah. So you were saying? Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah.
So how you maintain vision and teamwork in your environment? So I know you work in a team, you work in a lab environment. How do you maintain vision and teamwork?
Yeah, so we're all on kind of individual projects. We're all part of the same group, but we're all generally on our own individual total synthesis projects. Okay, so that's the way that it's kind of organized, which I do like. I think that allows for a lot of independent development in students, and that's mainly what I was looking to do in my graduate career was develop myself independently. Okay. That being said, we're consistently or constantly discussing problems that we might have with other group members. Okay, so I might not be working on the same project, but we're all studying organic chemistry. We're all studying synthetic organic chemistry to build complex molecules. So I think that's really, really helpful is sort of is trying to still collaborate even though you're on different projects, because you know you can get isolated pretty quick if you're not discussing problems with other students in the lab. So and I also think that's a lot of like Professor Williams, the way he kind of manages the lab too, is more like that. You know, like when we do group meetings, we don't do reviews of our own chemistry. You know, we review literature, total syntheses within the literature, right? Because we should already be discussing our own chemistry with students. You know, the group doesn't need to hear about our chemistry, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Constantly talking about it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So, yeah, that's good. So, do you have any advice to those wanting to pursue the field you're currently working in as a student?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I think the general quip is like, don't be afraid to bake cookies, okay? Like, don't be afraid to get in the lab and to try your ideas. And I just heard something recently that Professor Shinby came and gave a talk, and I had the opportunity to speak with him for about 40 minutes or something. And he said, if you're only doing the things that your advisor is suggesting, or the pathway that your advisor is suggesting, you're just a technician. Okay?
Wow.
So, yeah, right. So I was like, wow, this is brilliant, you know? So I'm going to give him credit for that, because I don't know if he got it from somebody else or whatever, but it's a very powerful sort of, I think, philosophy, because it's really true. I wasn't sure if everybody did that. You know, if everybody on late nights tried their ideas, and then if it works, you tell your advisor, but if it doesn't work, you know, you just kind of move on. You know? So that was something that I would say that is the main thing. And it takes a while to kind of get your hands wet, or trust your hands in the lab to make sure, okay, well, you know, do you think I really got all the water out of that reaction, or did it get killed because I made some mistake with, you know, flame drying glassware? Or do you think I'm heavy-handed on this and it killed the reaction? Or so I think it takes a minute to trust your own results. Yeah, I mean, that would be my main thing. I would always kind of remain open-minded, and you know, there's lots of ideas that I've tried, and you know, some work, some don't, but I think that's the main thing. I mean, you're here to develop yourself as an independent scientist who can communicate clearly with other group members to keep an overall vision in mind. You know what I mean? And to solve complicated problems. So there's kind of a balance there, right? Of working on your own project, but you need to develop these communication skills for career-wise and how to move forward. But you also need to be independently creative and scientific with your, you know, and pretty focused with how you're spending your time. That would be the kind of the general advice. I don't have it figured out yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. So as we go along, can you see the slide? Yeah,
I'm good.
So you see the macrolactones on the side, right? You see the macrolactones? Yes. Yeah, good. Just so note, people who are watching this, this is some of the molecules that have been worked on in the group. So going along with these questions, which mechanism is your favorite and why? So these are a little technical. I hope you're ready for these. Which mechanism is your favorite and why?
Favorite mechanism?
So we can flip to the list. I have my little mechanism book on the side that I work through basically every single day. Would you say it is acetic acid synthesis? Acetic acid condensation? Would you say aldo condensation? A PEL reaction? Fish esterification? What's your favorite mechanism or type of reaction? Or phrase it differently.
Wow.
What do you find most useful in the lab?
Most useful,
SN2s, SN1s.
I think, wow, that's got to change like week by week.
Oh, that's a week by week thing?
Yeah, definitely. Because some things work really well, some things don't. You know, wow. I mean, there's some really unique ones that I think are kind of neat, and then there's some old school ones that I think are like incredible.
Let's share them. Go ahead, share them.
I mean, I think there's no doubt that you have to say the Diels-Alder reaction is...
Yes, classic. It's classic.
Yeah, I mean, that...
You
then
toasted
kind
the
of,
deals all the
yeah, you got to have that. I would say, I think I take a lot of interest in like the old school like Aarhus-Parrish reactions, some of the first kind of asymmetric aldol reactions. These are really sort of intricate substrate controlled. Anything that really provides substrate control, antioselectivity or stereoselectivity is probably the most beautiful thing. I mean, kind of now the new age sort of stuff is you're interested in imparting stereochemistry based on whatever catalytic metal synergy using your catalytic transition metal, which is kind of the new, sort of revolution. And I mean, some of these are, named reactions, or I mean, you could even say like cross couplings or named reactions. I mean, there's a whole lot of them that I could probably name off.
on the list. Okay, that's fine. Well, you've named a couple. That's good.
Yeah, there's a couple for you.
Okay, so how have you gone about making this molecule? Is it like classified or is it confidential? What was the first step to making this molecule, or have you not made it as yet?
Yeah, so that one's made. So what you want to do is you have a bond disconnection of your amide bond with the acrylamide backbone. Okay?
So break it down. Bond disconnection. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so you have a bond disconnection at the amide. Okay.
Sure.
I don't know if I have I think you might have the laser pointer, but if you have that,
let me see. Yeah, so you have a bond disconnection at the amide. So right there.
It's between the carbonyl and the nitrogen.
Yep.
Perfect. Right there. Yeah. So, and that yields you this heteroaromatic amine with the thiazole and the pyridine.
Okay.
As well as whatever you'd envision as the other portion of the ketone to make that amide bond. So you could envision carboxylic acid. You could envision a methyl ester. Something that would be less stable than your amide, hopefully. Okay. So, and I've tried carboxylic acids. I've tried kind of a bunch of different amide bond coupling to form that bond. The only thing that's found to work is a stoichiometric trimethyl aluminum mediated at reflux with this amine with the methyl ester or ethyl ester, either one. So, so let's just say retrosynthetically, you break that amide bond, you make it via kind of sort of addition of the pretty electron deficient. Yeah, exactly. Pretty electron deficient heteroaromatic amine there. So that's kind of the thiazole species, and that's cross-coupled to that pyridine. So you take the pyridine, it's the 3-boronic acid pyridine. Okay, so you make the boronic acid of that pyridine.
Okay.
It's commercially available, so you buy that, and then the thiazole is then cross-coupled to that pyridine, and that gives you the heteroaromatic amine. That one's not that crazy. We did make some developments though in forming. So on the other half of this, so if you make that bond disconnection, yeah, perfect. So that double bond there and this sort of other heterocycle there, these are called oxazines. Okay, so this one in particular is a 2H13 oxazine.
Okay, cool.
So that's actually made through the gamma hydroxyamide, if you can envision that. So there was an initial report which used a DDQ triphenyl phosphine mediated sort of Appel type conditions, really low yield, sort of like 30%. But one of the contributions that we made that was pretty significant on this project was the formation of 1,3 oxazines.
Okay.
Through its use of deoxyfluorination reagents, DAST and extofluor E. So formation of that, occurs readily. It occurs at -78 in about 15 minutes to an hour to form that 1,3 oxazine with these deoxyfluorination reagents.
Okay.
So that was pretty useful to find that out, and the yield is high, 95-98% yields.
Yeah.
So that's how I made that. I mean, in a nutshell, verbally to kind of walk you through it.
Yeah, that's good. So, what has been some of the most beneficial advice that you have received? As we conclude, what has been some of the most beneficial advice you have received?
Don't let the molecules sleep. Okay, this is from Yeah, so this is from Professor Williams, where you don't want to let these things
sit.
And not from a like, oh, this is reactive, it's going to decompose or anything like this, but you want to keep your foot on the gas pedal as much as you can. You always want some consistent pressure on making progress.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most helpful things to me. If it's kind of the end of the day, it's 7-8 p.m. and you say, oh well, I think I've had enough today, I'm going to go home. Versus I'm going to set up one more reaction. I'm going to set up 2 more reactions, and not leaving until that stuff is done. So getting that kind of extra push.
So grit
out of your day. Yeah. I think that's got to be some of the, I would say probably some of the most, and also, somewhat thinking smarter and harder. Okay. So, people kind of like try to just say like, think smarter, don't work harder or something like this. But, if you have both of these things in mind, I think that you can achieve a lot of stuff. And
I agree.
Obviously the common tropes of like not giving up and things like that, are pretty important.
Those platitudes, they're nice.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're helpful. I think they're definitely
it's important to persevere because life will bring you challenges, and that's just being realistic. It will bring you challenges. You have to persevere. But yeah, Jake, it was so good to have you on as a guest. I am so glad you were able to join me today. Thanks for listening. We're glad you were able to tune into this podcast. Once again, this is The New Chemist, where we discuss chemistry, which simply put is the science of change, as well as the other sciences, careers, community, research, and COVID-19. Thanks again for listening. Note, the views on this podcast represent those of my guest and I.